One time, country music singer John Denver said that West Virginia is almost heaven. Well, on November 17th, the Oklahoma Sooners in West Virginia against the Mountaineers, well, they almost had to write a different verse about West Virginia, because if the Sooners had not been able to come from behind in the final few seconds to win a thrilling game, it would have been not almost hell, it would have been 100% hell. West Virginia would have been rocky roads, pure hell. And it would have been a long plane ride from West Virginia back to Norman. But the Sooners find a way, as Bob Stoops would say, in the end, 24 seconds to go in a game that featured high numbers. 99 combined points, over 1,440 yards of total offense, a night in which West Virginia's Tavon Austin had the game of his life, breaking the Big 12 record for all-purpose yardage, 572 all-purpose yards, but it came down to about 4 yards. 4-yard touchdown pass on fourth down in the final seconds to Kenny Stills, one of 6 TD passes for Landry Jones on the night, as the Oklahoma Sooners needed every single point that they could get in a 50-49 win in Morgantown against the Mountaineers. Before I break down the game, just a reminder that near the end of the show, we are going to talk a little bit about Kansas State and Oregon. First time ever in the history of the BCS that the number 1 and number 2 teams in the BCS both lose the same night. And I'll even take it a step further. They both lost within a 30-minute stretch of each other. So we'll break that down later. But first of all, talking about the Sooners and Mountaineers, of course, beginning of the year, we thought this was going to be for the Big 12 championship. Of course, it didn't really turn out that way. Mountaineers trying to break a 5-game losing streak. In the beginning, the Oklahoma defense, I'm going to tell you what, did a fine job. First 3 possessions for West Virginia, only 3 points. Sooner offense, though, first 2 possessions, touchdown. Landry Jones looked crisp, especially on third down. We'll talk about third down in a little bit. Got a touchdown. Second drive, field goal. And then after that, Sooners kind of went into a funk offensively. And then defensively, same thing would happen for OU. Talk about the offense a little bit for Oklahoma tonight. The passing game, although it was real good, I wish we would have seen a lot more passing. Okay, it's that simple. West Virginia came into this game, as you might know, as the worst pass defense in college football. Not even close. One of the worst defenses also in terms of points allowed. But Oklahoma's philosophy tonight, for some reason, they seemed to try to force something that wasn't there. What I mean by that is that they seemed to want to run when it really wasn't necessary to. Look, you might be saying, well, you got to be a balanced attack. Okay, you got to be balanced in order to be effective. In this case, you have to make an exception because West Virginia, and I'm watching this game on a high-definition television, and if you're watching it on HD, you know that the screen spreads out further so you can see more of the field. When I'm watching the action away from the ball, you're seeing wide-open receivers. West Virginia providing all kinds of cushion. And there were times in which when OU caught the ball, no matter if it was a running back or a receiver, West Virginia at times would be whiffing on the receiver. In other words, missed tackles. That led to a big touchdown by Jalen Saunders. I don't understand why Josh Heupel was trying to force the run when it didn't need to be, especially inside where the Sooners had limited success. Now, I know what you might be thinking, well, Damian Williams got a big run for a touchdown. He did. But tell me, how many big runs tonight did Oklahoma have? You know what? You see 5 fingers right there? I bet you anything that OU didn't even have that many big runs tonight. OU had barely over 100 yards of rushing, and I think 65 of it occurred on just one run. Take that big run away, it looks like OU against Notre Dame a few weeks ago. And you might be saying, well, OU couldn't run that night, and they lost. Well, the thing was, though, Notre Dame gave Oklahoma some passing yards, but they rarely allowed OU receivers to get past them. And I don't ever remember OU getting big pass plays in that game. In this game, it was a lot different because OU had a lot more space. And they did a lot more after the catch, something you didn't really see that much against Notre Dame. And the West Virginia secondary, to put it kindly, stinks. It's that simple. I don't have to remind Mountaineer fans of that. They probably say, well, tell us something we don't already know. OU should have put more emphasis on the pass, especially on that game-winning drive when, again, they're running the Belldozer, which is an effective formation, but the timing of it I question, because in this case you're trying to get a touchdown to win the game. You only have about 40 seconds to go, and on third down you're running Belldozer, and you need about 4 yards for the first, and it doesn't work out. So now you put all your chips on the table for fourth down. And thankfully, Landry and Steele delivered, I think, on a slant pattern. And again, a terrific night for Landry Jones. Only 1 interception and 6 TDs. And for Kenny Stills, I think he had 10 receptions tonight and 3 TDs. And he was an escort, of course, on that big TD pass, in which Jalen Saunders caught it. And Stills ran side by side with him to assist, to make sure nobody tackled him. So, no complaints about the passing game. I just wish we would have seen more of it. As far as the defense goes, for Mike Stoops, I know he knows defense, okay? I know that. We've seen that in the past. His reputation as a defensive coordinator for OU speaks for itself, so he didn't have to apologize to me or anybody. But tonight, they really did not look prepared for this, okay? And you're watching the defense, and you know that they're trying to do one thing in particular. They're trying to make sure that West Virginia doesn't hurt them through the air. Okay? You're trying to make sure that you have that part covered. Give Dana Holgorsen of West Virginia credit, though, because what he said tonight was, we're going to use number 1, Tavon Austin, primarily as a running back. Look, he's our best athlete. He's quick. Of course, he's fast, but he has such incredible acceleration. It's like putting a sports car into 5th gear when he's in the open field. Problem was for OU is that you didn't have very many people defending the run. So not only was Austin, able to have a lot of success because he got past the first wave, but the rest of the defense, they were whiffing. They weren't in prime position to make tackles on the goal line situation where West Virginia's driving in the second half. It's 3rd and goal. It's a 5-yard run for Austin. 2 Oklahoma defensive players, Javon Harris, completely has his jockstrap shaken from him on the 5-yard line, and then DeMontre Hurst didn't even look like he tried. It was that type of a night for the Oklahoma defense. All 11 players, when it came to containing Tavon Austin, stunk up the field. And you give credit to Holgorsen for being able to utilize Austin as much as possible. It was obvious that the West Virginia coaching staff was going to say either Austin's going to get about 600 yards of all-purpose yardage or his legs are going to fall from his body. One of those things is going to happen first, and it was the former. He got nearly 600 yards of all-purpose yardage. 344 yards rushing, 82 yards receiving. Big 12 record for all-purpose yardage, and I think he came pretty damn close to the NCAA all-time record for all-purpose yardage. That's from one player, unacceptable for the OU defense. Now go ahead and grade the OU defense right now. Pretty simple grade, F-. It was atrocious. You have to really go back to the mid-'90s and the John Blake era against Nebraska to find an OU defense that gave up as much as that team did tonight. That was a horror show. Not only did we see Austin dominate that game in the beginning, but as the game wore along, the Sooners didn't adjust. And that was the most disappointing part. The Sooners were fortunate to get out of Morgantown with the win. But it was a horrible performance by the defense, and they better learn from this. Otherwise, Oklahoma State, with a terrific running attack of their own in Joseph Randall and the passing game that ain't too shabby. Doesn't matter if the game's in Norman, Oklahoma defense has some big concerns and some questions to answer. Offensively, grading the team, I'm going to go a solid B. Yeah, the ground game was limited, but the passing game sure wasn't. Good night for the passing game. And third down conversions. West Virginia was 8 of 14 on third down. They were clutch. But Oklahoma was even better on third down. They were at 60% at 9 of 15. And a lot of those third downs that Landry completed were 3rd and 10 or longer, 3rd and longs. They weren't just 3rd and 2s. They had to rely on Landry's arm. Give credit to the offensive line. They didn't get much of a push on rushing, but they sure gave Landry enough protection when it came to throwing. And that was pivotal right there. It's a good team effort. Special teams, I'm going to go B-. The coverage was good tonight because West Virginia in recent years has been a good team when it comes to returning kicks and punts. Sooners held containment right there. Mixed reviews as far as place kicking. Honeycutt was 1 of 2. Did miss the kick before halftime, so I can't give him an A there. First kick, by the way, he's missed since the season opener against UTEP. And in this case, the Sooners needed every point that they could get their hands on. Overall grade, C+. Again, atrocious performance by the defense, but the offense was clutch when it had to be the most, including the game winner. And the Sooners get out of Morgantown with the skin of their teeth with the win. For West Virginia, that's now 5 losses in a row, and they played hard, but they're finding out pretty quickly that the Big 12 is not the Big East Conference. It is going to take them time to be a contender in this league, but I picked them to finish second in the league, and no question they're overrated, and it's really a shame because their offense is pretty good, but their defense gives them very little chance for overall success. So what does this do for the BCS picture as far as Oklahoma, as far as an at-large bid? They won at West Virginia, and all they got to do now is win against OSU, and then the final week against TCU. They'll go 10-2, get a BCS at-large, right? Not necessarily. Even though Louisiana Tech lost on Saturday, they seem to be the one team that maybe could sneak in there and steal an at-large. Well, could be another team now. And that's because of the upsets that occurred on Saturday night. 2 big ones, as a matter of fact. We'll break down the Pac-12 because Oregon, previous number 2 and unbeaten, loses at home in overtime to Stanford. So now Stanford, if they win against UCLA next week, would win the North of the Pac-12 and would go to the Pac-12 championship game, which means that Oregon, if they win against Oregon State, would be at 11-1 and would be in prime position for a BCS at-large. Remember, they would have a higher ranking than OU in all likelihood still and would still have a better record than the Sooners. So the Pac-12 could get 2 bids for BCS bowls. And unless Clemson loses to South Carolina next week, you could be looking at the ACC getting 2 bids as well. SEC, you know, is going to get 2 bids, and Notre Dame is going to get an at-large as well. So that could leave the Big 12 with just 1 bid, and that could mean that you might have to have Kansas State lose on December 1st to this team right here. That's right. So if the Sooners can win out and finish 10-2, then Oklahoma Sooner fans, you might have to do something that is pretty much forbidden, but for 1 week you might have to make an exception. Hook 'em horns against Kansas State, because that might be Oklahoma's only hope in landing a BCS bid, and that is winning the Big 12 outright, thanks to the craziness that happened on Saturday. Otherwise, if OU and K-State both finish with 1 loss, they're Big 12 champs, but K-State gets the trophy and the automatic bid since they beat the Sooners head-to-head. Like I said, it's been a crazy, crazy year so far, and of course Notre Dame is now going to be the new number 1 in the BCS. And even though it's a Catholic school, on Saturday evening for about 3.5 hours, they were probably full-fledged Baptist people because they were rooting for Baylor tonight, and didn't hurt because Baylor upset Kansas State, and it wasn't even close. I think Baylor won by 4 touchdowns. K-State looked flat. Baylor looked real crisp, and K-State was turning the ball over like crazy, something that they hadn't done all season long. So the Wildcats suffered their first loss of the year, and you have to feel for Bill Snyder because that team came so close, and it looked like they were well on their way to Miami for the national championship. But now that's gone, and now they'll try to beat Texas and try to win the Big 12 outright. Just a reminder, my weekly matchup show will be Monday evening. It'll be early because of Thanksgiving obligations. I'll talk about the Sooners and Cowboys. I'll talk a little bit more about the BCS. Again, West Virginia, they played pretty hard on Saturday. They never quit. But the Oklahoma Sooners, in the end, got the final score on 4th down with 24 seconds to go and edge out the Mountaineers 50-49 in one of the craziest games I've ever seen in my entire life. Boomer Sooner.